We are so excited for our next keynote conversation. Barry Lynn has been really an amazing thought leader around issues of understanding market concentration, the economic impact of that, the role of government, and unlocking that and addressing those issues. And we're just so appreciative of him making time to join us today. Barry, turn on your camera if you are with us. There he is. It's coming. There he is. Hey there.
How you doing?
Oh, we're just spending 2 days talking about music and policy. So we're just in our sweet spot. This is what we do. It's great to see you, and we really do appreciate you joining us. As we talked about the other day, this conference is really not only about how is our community responding to 2020 and sort of all the triage and just sort of all the immediate relief things that are obviously top of mind and critical for the music and creative sector, but also an opportunity to kind of have a fundamental reframing and think about the structures of our community, whether they're policy, whether they're industry related, whether they're philanthropic, educational, et cetera. And really, again, we're making fun of the president-elect's Build Back Better slogan, but that's kind of what it is. It's how do we as a community visualize what it looks like to have a better, fairer, more equitable, more sustainable music scene, music community. And I think the work that you do at Open Markets Institute is at the heart of it. We were so fortunate to have you and Thomas Frank at our conference, I think 10 years ago. And I would suggest that the conversation probably hasn't advanced much in terms of music and antitrust since then in some ways. But just to open up, Barry, could you talk a little bit about your work, your organization, and let's just start big picture, and then we're going to kind of work into your sense of what the next couple of years might look like, and we'll kind of tease out what that could mean for music if our community is willing to engage with that. So just talk a little bit about your work, if you don't mind.
And thank you for having me today. It is great to be back, and you guys do such terrific work. And so what we do is, my organization, what we do is we fight concentrations of power that threaten our democracy, that threaten our individual liberty, that threaten our ability to do our work and not have it stolen by some powerful actor out there, by Google or Facebook or Amazon or someone else. And, we started doing this a long time ago. I started working on monopolization more than 15 years ago. And I actually just published my third book, which is called Liberty from All Masters, which just came out last month. And it's, and so what we've seen, and there actually is good news here. I mean, yes, there hasn't been that much change from when we all last spoke about 6 years ago in the music industry, but in the larger discussion about power and concentrated economic power, there have been huge advances just in the last couple of years, just in the last few months. So this is a fight that is moving forward. It's a fight that, even though these corporations are awesomely powerful and are truly threatening to our democracy, this is a fight that we are fighting, and it's a fight that we're going to ultimately win.
So just as a kind of a primer for folks who maybe haven't thought about some of this terminology and some of the processes, I mean, from a big picture perspective, like, what does antitrust enforcement even mean? Like, what is a starting point in terms of how we can understand that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And antitrust, it sounds very technical, right? And a lot of folks actually intentionally make it sound technical so that the rest of us don't pay much attention. But what really antitrust, we don't even call it antitrust in my organization. I call it anti-monopoly, or actually in the new book, I say Americans created a system of liberty, the American system of liberty, to ensure that the powerful private actor is not in control of our lives. So this is really something that goes back to the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was not just a declaration of independence from Britain. It was also a declaration of independence of the individual from other individuals. You're not my boss. You can't take my money. I'm not a sharecropper on your land. I own my own land. That's what the Declaration of Independence was. Now, it took, at that time, it was a very imperfect country that we created, a very imperfect nation. But that promise, that declaration and that promise, that's what has allowed us to steadily increase our democracy and steadily increase our sort of the realm of liberty in which we live. So really, anti-monopoly are just the tools that we use to bust or neutralize all forms of dangerous private power. And we did a great job for 200 years until about the time of Reagan. And what we're doing now is we're basically overthrowing what the Reagan administration did in the 1980s.
And so in the music community, we've seen this. Again, I get fixated on structures. I don't know if that's the right frame, or not, but that's the way I think about these things. And again, going back to our work at Future Music Coalition, Future Music Coalition really started as a response to the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which paved the way for commercial radio consolidation. And the sort of notion that something that back in those days was so incredibly critical to the health of the entire music ecosystem, it's just sort of transformed over a period of years, into something that was incredibly different. And we don't need to do a detour into radio, but, it's always been this question, since we started doing this work, whatever configuration we're in, of what do we just have to accept versus where do we feel like we have some agency? And so one of the things we hear a lot about in the music community, and a lot of discussion yesterday, I think, Dessa brought it up in our opening session. I mean, this sense from musicians that they're streaming, dominance from streaming platforms. They set the pay, they control the market, they are running the show, and that's just the game. And you either play the game or you're not in the game. I mean, no choice. I mean, so what would be sort of, again, this is going to take years to kind of engage with this work. This is not something like, on February 1, everybody's like rallying to go, but what would be like a different way that we could be thinking about what the music community as entrepreneurs, as artists, as activists, how we could be engaging in those kind of conversations about these structures that maybe we haven't, put as much energy towards?
No, I mean, that's the key thing is like, how can we do this? And the way to do it is actually, number one, to remember we're the bosses, as citizens of the United States of America, we tell other folks what to do. And that's not just the folks that are in government. And now, we'll set aside Donald Trump. He's a very special case, right? But but it's true for the people who represent us in our government. We understand that, but it's also true for the political economy. It's also true for our corporations. The corporations are here to serve us, and not vice versa. That's what the American Revolution was. It was a revolution against, among other things, the British East India Company. And the Americans said, hey, you know what? We're not here to get bossed around by the British East India Company. That's why we did the Tea Party. So what we're doing today is we're saying, we ain't here to be bossed around by and to be used by Google and Facebook and Amazon and a couple other corporations to serve their interests. We're going to restructure them. That's a good word that you used earlier, structure. We're going to restructure these corporations to ensure that they work for us, that we get to do whatever we want. We get to make the music we want. We get to make the art we want, take the photographs we want, write the books we want. And we exchange our music and our books and our ideas with each other without intermediaries taxing us and stealing our properties and manipulating how we engage with one another. This is ending. The era of Google, Facebook, and Amazon is ending. And I'll give you just, I would encourage everybody to go look at the report that was put out by the House Antitrust Subcommittee back in early October. This is a committee that's run by David Cicilline from Rhode Island. And the report that they put out on the digital marketplace was foundational for understanding the problem and foundational for mapping the pathway towards fixing it. And this was a report that was supported by the Democrats on that subcommittee and the Republicans. So we are and have begun the process of building a political economy online in America and around the world that works for us, not for them.
I think, if we stipulate that the music community on a structural level is really been, sort of dictated by, consolidation of labels, consolidation of broadcasters, consolidation of venues, consolidation of promoters. I mean, it's just been, side. This has all been, happening since the 80s, since Reagan era. So, it obviously is not going to be unwound overnight, but how would you suggest the community start to, again, get the head around what it would even look like? Like what are the first steps to sort of, do that matching of like documenting what's happening in the community and trying to understand where you take action or what action could be?
Yeah, no, and what people should do is, what Americans should do is we have to get back into the habit of saying, what is it we want? What is the perfect world we want? And once we know what the perfect world is that we want, then we go out and we get it. Mm-hmm. So that's our first challenge, is actually to say, what is it that we want? Now, from my point of view, when I look back at the political economy of the 70s in terms of the lack of concentration of power, whether it's in the physical venue or in any of the distribution venues, that's basically what we want. We don't want there to be sort of any choke points at any point. And if it's technologically, there are going to be certain types of choke points. Everything runs on the internet. A lot of things are going to run across certain apps. But there are ways to take these apps and take these other sort of choke point technologies and make them safe. We had that fight with the telecommunications corporations with the Open Internet Order, net neutrality in 2015. Now, the Trump people set that aside. They overturned that, right? But we know exactly what we want. We want, when you have a choke point, when you have an essential facility, you neutralize it, net neutrality. We're going to also do app neutrality, so like, right now, when you go on Facebook or when you go on Amazon, they're manipulating you at every moment. They're manipulating you in order to sell their power to manipulate you to other folks, to advertisers. They built manipulation machines. As we move forward, what we're going to do is get rid of that power to manipulate. We're going to change their business models. So it's based on, if they're providing a good service, we'll pay them a small subscription fee. We're not going to pay them by letting them manipulate us. It's like we will be the masters of these corporations. And that's, again, it's like we've seen this, and it's not just the antitrust case, report in the Congress. We've also seen the DOJ, Department of Justice, bring a case against Google. And this is just the first of many cases. And the Europeans are slow. They kind of operate in a different plateau entirely, but they're also moving, much more swiftly to enact real change. And so this is happening around the world, and it's going to accelerate.
And can you speak to the importance of sort of, documenting and translating very grounded and practical industry knowledge about the way these systems work, to help inform policymakers and others, so they can, it's not that you need to be an expert in the law. You don't have to be an expert in, sort of the mechanics of what you're looking to do. This isn't like trying to get the Save Our Stages legislation passed. It's more like, how can you as a community member be a resource to policymakers to help them understand how this stuff plays out in practicality?
Yeah.
Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, and actually that's really important. One of the things that we see when we do have hearings is we see that people are afraid. Like with the antitrust, the House antitrust report that came out recently, it goes into great depth about the fear that many of the people who sort of testified privately had about having their names come out, because they're afraid of retribution. They're afraid that Amazon would come in and crush them, because Amazon has done that. All of these platforms have crushed other little people, So now the good thing is that once a few people start to talk in public together, once you create a community of people who are, sort of saying the same thing in public, it makes it easier for everyone to speak that language, because it makes it harder for the platform to crush the outlier. So the key thing for us is to understand is that, there is truly power in numbers. We need to speak out. We need to go to the government. We don't have to go all the way to Washington. It's like what we see with Google, Facebook, and Amazon right now is we see every state, all 50 states, plus DC, plus Puerto Rico, are using their own antitrust authority to investigate Google and to investigate Amazon. And the reason we actually have a case against Google right now is because the states forced the Trump Department of Justice to bring that case. It was people operating through the states. So use your voice, stand there together and say, these guys are screwing with us. These guys are stealing our money. These guys are manipulating, they're choking us off. They're hiding what we do. They're manipulating us. They're preventing us from making markets with the people who want to listen to our music.
So what, Barry, should we be looking for? You said next couple of years are going to be really exciting. You mentioned the House Antitrust Committee. What are some things that we should be looking for, and what are some ways, again, that we can plug in, either from a music perspective or just as citizens who want to support the work?
Yeah, no, and this is, what you want to really look at is, this is a time to push the Biden administration. It's build back better. That's what we are doing. It's like things have actually been destroyed since Reagan changed the law, or changed the framing of the law, changed the philosophy that we use to understand the law. Monopolists have destroyed huge portions of our society, of our culture, of our personal lives. They've destroyed people's businesses and people's careers. So it's not just a matter of building back better from the age of Trump. It's actually building back better from what began 40 years ago when Ronald Reagan came in with this neoliberal philosophy, and then was accelerated 28 years ago when Bill Clinton came along and took Ronald Reagan's philosophy and carried it into telecommunications, and carried it into media, and carried it into banking, and carried it into trade. So this was very much a bipartisan screwing of the American people. What we're seeing is a bipartisan awakening. And so what we should be looking for is how do we pressure the Biden administration to move faster? They're pretty open. The door is wide open, and it's just like, let's make them understand that we understand that this is a threat to our democracy. This is a threat to our liberty, and we ain't putting up with it anymore. We demand immediate action against these little boys from Silicon Valley. We're done putting up with this.
Barry, Lynn, we're so appreciative of your work and for joining us. And we hope that this is inspiring some thinking in our community as we start to kind of make our plans and set our agendas and figure out our priorities for next year and the years to come. Really, really great. Thank you, Barry.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to see you all.
Awesome. Great to see you.